and I'll be sending it out as well so that everyone can see it. And thanks to Augusta, who, as you know, was ill at the annual church meeting. And that's all that's on the agenda for this meeting. For her to give her talk and then for any questions to her. That's great. Father, we thank you for all those who give so generously to the churches as we look at our needs as well as our we pray that you bless Augusta as she leads us, get us all, give us ears to hear, and you will have us here. In Jesus' name. Amen.
Thank you. Okay, so we're going to get right into it. And I would not want to take much of our time, so maybe within 15 minutes, hopefully, we should be done. We have some copies here, just about 3 of each, so I don't know how we're going to share this, but sorry, it couldn't get to everybody. Here.
It was sent out.
Yeah, I think it was sent out during the actual meeting. No, so there are different copies there. One of it. This one as well. Yes. Okay, basically the agenda for the meeting is the highlights of 2024. It just shows the actual versus budget. Elaine is slide 3. Thank you. Okay, this just tells us what the Treasury Unit of St. George's does. Basically, what I do is just to ensure that the financial records are transparently recorded and that the information there is reliable. So to a large extent, you're sure that what you see as the inflow and the expense is what is actually being recorded. And so the agenda, it just shows the 2024 financial highlight, showing what was actually spent versus the budget, and how we sourced our revenue, and how we spent the expenses. We take a look at the budget, that's 2024 and 2025. And then, as at the time I prepared this report, I had the first quarter revenue actuals, as well as our goals and status for 2025. Then every other notices, and of course the opportunity to ask questions. Now the next slide, it's just going to show us, it's not very clear, sorry, but the actual presentation for the 2024 highlight versus the budget. Now where you see LE, if you can see that, that's what we actually, those are the actual entries for 2024, and beside it where you have the budgets, that was what was budgeted for 2024. Now as we can see, the budget versus what was actually received in 2024 seems significantly very high, but that is because of the curate funding that came in. So it was not necessarily a major addition to St. George's. It was the funds that were allocated specifically for the curate ministry. It's good to mention, if we're not aware, that the curate ministry is funded by the diocese, 70%, and 30% by St. George's. And for 2024, we had a very kind donor who took care of St. George's expenses for the curates. So there was I don't even think it was up to 500 euros expense to St. George's in 2024 for the curates ministry. Now for our expenses, what was budgeted, if you can see that clearly, I'll just read out the figure, was 104,396 euros. But what was actually spent is 162,183. And again, because of the curate's expenses that came in. But beyond that, we also had to increase the stipend of our youth worker. And majorly because her status changed, obviously she got married. And part of the consideration for the stipend that was paid to her before was because the church provided accommodation. But but she had to leave, and so we had to take care of that. It had to be covered in her stipend. Maybe not 100% covered, but at least some adjustment had to be made. And so there was an increase in the youth workers' stipend, as well as the curate's cost, and that's why we have that very high variance or difference. Now, it's good to mention that all of our operating costs in 2024 remain the same as with other years. The tracking employment, repairs and maintenance, internet and telephone, the insurance and IRPF, cleaning, utilities, diocesan quotas. It's good to mention here that the diocesan quotas actually, there was a little drop compared to what we would usually spend, as what was spent in 2023. But the only reason why the value is a bit high here is also still owed to the curates. There were some expenses that needed to be deducted, which the diocese funded anyway. The diocese funded, but we still had to pay back to the diocese for that. That's why we have that figure looking a bit over what was budgeted.
Can you explain when you said they paid, but we have to pay back?
Well, it's not really a payment and then we pay back. So there are some associated costs with the coming of the curate that we had to pay for, that the diocese had to charge to us. That is covered on them. Beyond that, we also have the what's it called, the common fund, which we pay. Those are the regular diocesan quotas that we pay. But outside of that, there were some. Let's see if I listed that. Okay, I didn't list out what those costs were, but I can look through and probably just add a comment to that and share. We probably need a breakdown of those additional costs that we had to incur in 2024 for the diocese. Next slide, please. Okay, so the uncommitted cash is something I could have addressed here anyway, but since you already asked, that is what is going to be the next, that's our opening balance for the next year. That's what we operate. Those are the funds that we have available that we operate with at the beginning of the new year. That's what the uncommitted cash covers. So when you deduct what was received from what was spent, the value that is left as your operating balance for the next year. That's what that is. So you can see it's in green. It looks like it's that there's a profit per se, but still, yes, it's what we have. Now, a few notes here that I probably have not captured when I was giving a rundown of the previous slide is just to mention that we had significant one-off donations. Now, for the regular donations we get through the weekly offerings, the envelopes, donors who put in standing orders, we also got a significant one-off donation of about 28,100 in 2024, as against the 10,000 that we budgeted. So that was an increase of 18,100 euros. And that is a very good, that was a good boost for the inflow in 2024. And while we keep praying to God for those kinds of blessings, we are not able to forecast for the new year going with those kinds of donations. Our donations are usually strictly from the regular donations we get. That's the weekly offerings, the envelopes, as well as those who put in standing orders, the fairs, the events. That's where we encourage participation, as well as a few ceremonies that we get from time to time. Okay. Now, yes, so I wanted to show a kind of colorful presentation of what our revenue is like and the expenditure. So like I was explaining earlier, our major major inflow comes from the regular donations. As you can see, it accounts for 70%, and the one-off donations, which is at 18%. The ceremony is 2%, and our fairs and events at 3%. And then our expenditure, the curates at 15%, of course, it started towards the half part of last year. The chaplains corner at 28%, the repairs and maintenance 4%, administration 10%, worship and evangelism 11%. Now, just to put a bit of context to administration, that does not only cover Josephine stipend. There are other costs that come under administration as a subhead. So when you see 10%, you don't think it's all the stipend that goes to Josephine.
And the worship and evangelism, what is that?
Yes, worship and evangelism covers, that's where we have the youth ministry. The youth ministry is covered on the worship supplies that we get, yes, and all of that. Now the next slide, please. This is an outlook for 2025, the budget, against what was actual in 2024. Now, for 2025, once again, we're hopeful for one-off donations. As you can see, I tried to increase the value of the one-off donation that we're going to get that we hope to get in this year. It's a risk, basically, but we're hopeful that we're going to get that. And then the regular giving, mostly because of the curate funding that we would be expecting for the year. As you can see, the actual regular donation in 2024 was at 78,000 euros, approximately, 78,300 approximately. And so the addition to make up 124 is because of the curate's funding that is expected, because it would definitely come in the 70% from the diocese. Now, because of the fairs, you can see that the actual in 2024 rather for the fairs was about 4,811, but we increased that to 5,400 because there were lots of talks about some events coming back and better preparations for the fairs. And so far, I would say that I think the events we've had so far, they've been quite successful. Now, for our operating costs.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, please.
Under the revenue, is it possible to maybe indicate diocese-related income?
No, but it's under we have to class it under the regular giving. Now, we don't want to, usually I would have created that as a specific donation, which is it's still covered under the one-offs, the one-off donation. But because the curate is an operating expense, the fund for which it is curated or it comes in is for an expense that is regular. It's for the curate's ministry. That's why it's merged with the giving. Yes, we don't want to treat it as a specific donation. And when we do that, it would also lock funds, which I would discuss in another part during this presentation. For the operating costs, we can see that the chaplain's employment reduced by about 1,000 euros, 1,200, and that's because the chaplain's week is reduced. His weeks are now reduced to 52, if I'm correct. Yeah. So we have about 1,200 euro savings on there. And then for the repairs and maintenance, it's really dropped because the only reason for the increase last year was because of some works that were being done to prepare for the curates, which of course we accounted for when we were preparing the budget for the curate ministry. So the repairs and maintenance is back to the average for 2020 to 2023, and we hope we're able to work within that, within what we proposed. The same with other expenses. The only other mid-year increase, just by 4%, are the stipends, which is mandatory by law for the admin, the youth worker, as well as for cleaning. Basically, those are the touch points here for that. It's also good to mention that in Q2 2025, we got a reduction. It was just communicated a few weeks ago, so it's not really captured here, but we got about 200 save in the pension. So that's good to mention for both the curate and the chaplain. Now, going by the budget that was prepared for this year, we're hopeful to save, but we will see that in the later presentation, how we're doing so far. That's when we compare what we proposed for Q1, Q2, and what we've actually been able to gather. Now, just as I already explained, bold increase of regular giving, following increased consistent weekly donations, and hopeful for more standing orders. And why this bold increase was made is because there were some requests by members of the church for standing orders, how to put in standing orders. So we're hopeful that those questions would become action points for them. And then, like I noted here, one-off revenue budgeted before the cash position if it is not attained. So we're praying that we actually hit the one-off revenue that we budgeted. Now, like I always like to mention this, that all expenses are recurrent and important, so that we're not looking for how to save on what we currently spend on. There is nothing to save on, to be honest. All of our costs are mandatory. We must pay for cleaning, we must pay for lights, we have to pay for water. There is no expense that is not important. Now, an addition here is very important, please, is that we got a 3,500 euro donation for the Curate's 2025 ministry. So it's part of our current funding, but it's tied for the Curate's 2025 ministry, basically by a donor. Now, the next slide, please. As at the time, next two slides, the next one. As at the time this report was prepared, I had, I think that was for April. The presentation here is up until April, so I will skip this because there is an updated presentation for this that we're going to see. But just as a little preparation for the next presentation, you can see the ones in red. Those are the actuals that we received. And compared to the budget, you can see that we're not meeting what we budgeted for. And this was in Q1. Only the fares, like I mentioned earlier, the fares seem to be picking up.
Could you read out the ones in red?
Yes, please. No worries. The donations, bank transfers, and envelopes, like I mentioned, this was as of April. It was 19,256 in euros. The ceremonies, 270. Weekly offerings, 2,538 and some cents. And compared to what was budgeted for the weekly offerings, we were budgeting about 3,000, over 3,000 for Q1, but we made 2,500. And for ceremonies, at the time it was 270, and what we had planned for is 1,000. And for the bank transfers, we were hopeful for 49K plus, and what we had realized is at that time was 19,000. So the variance is a lot.
One question, the first one.
Yes.
Bank transfers and envelopes. This is
TPV, that's a contactless at the back, everything that has to do with that kind of inflow, yes. One-off donations and all, that's what it's covered on there.
The weekly offerings is back.
The weekly offerings, the envelopes, the bank transfers, they're all covered there. The contactless giving, one-off donations, they're all under that donation, that broad donation on there.
Why is it so low? Why is it much lower than the...
Well, yes, it's supposed to be the regular giving, it's supposed to be what we expect, but obviously we're not
How much
hitting
was it
that.
last year? Up until this point, how much did we have last year?
Up until what?
How much was that from January to 20th of April, more or less, last year?
In the previous year?
Yeah.
Yes, we have done about 40 something.
Okay.
Yes, as at the previous year. Now for the, like I noted here, why we budgeted this amount was because we were expecting funding from the diocese for the curate ministry. Because that funding, the funding for the curate ministry was given in halves. So for 2024, we got for 6 months first, and then the other 6 months was yet to be received as at the time of this report. And it was calculated, it was proposed to be added as at February, March this year, but it didn't come in. And the value was supposed to be around 23K.
But the last year, we didn't have that money,
No.
right? So that shouldn't be the reason why there's...
Last year we had a one-off donation, like I mentioned earlier. We got a one-off donation of about 28 to 100.
Yeah.
So those one-off donations are not our regular, they're not things that we account for and expect as inflow. But we made that bold decision this year to add it to the budget and increase because we were hopeful. Yes, so even if we haven't been able to meet that, we're just being grateful for that. Now, the others are just notices that we are already aware about. I'm not going to spend much time on that, but I just wanted to add here, just because of the sake of the Mod 182 forms, that's the tax forms, that the POS machine, I get a lot of questions. Oh, I made payment through the contactless. If you don't put down your name, if you don't put down your name using the slip there is no way we're going to be able to recognize who made the donation. We can't account for it in terms of tying into someone's name. So if you're using the contactless machine at the back, please ensure that you use the slip. It's confidential. Just we only presents the detail to me. Okay, so we will go to the next page of the presentation. Next document.
So next up.
The document, yes, the next document. Okay, I think that's really small, sorry. But if you already have this in your emails, you could just quickly check through this. I'm only going to browse through this because this is supposed to be the audited version, but because we've not had this this meeting, I'm unable to submit this to the auditors for audits. Well, this is what the audit report looks like, basically. So at your convenience, I'd encourage you to read through each of this. The presentation regarding the stipend, administration costs, utilities and cleaning, worship and evangelism. These are just the breakdown, basically, of how the inflow, the ones that are inflows, the ones that are expenses, the breakdown basically for each of this. So what you don't really get to see in the Excel file shared earlier, like for instance, asking what is covered under administration or what's covered under worship and evangelism, we find here. Under worship and evangelism, as an example, we have the youth, leadership, the transportation costs, conferences and synod, marketing and publicity. So you can see all of that data here. Something of note here is the car lease, which ended in this year. It's good to mention that because that kind of increased a little our expense for this year. Now, the car that the chaplain used to work with for ministry purpose, the lease, which commenced 5 years ago, it's ended, Simon, if I'm correct, February this year. Yes, and so we needed to renew the lease, basically. And of course, a lease that commenced 5 years ago, we don't expect the value to remain same as at this year. And so there was a little increase with the car lease this year, covering insurance, if I'm correct, and the car, which is leased for another 5 years. Simon, thank you. Now, something else to mention here to identify the treasury limits is the purchasing policy for St. George's. For the way approvals are made for expenditure. So for expenditure less than 250 euros, the chaplain, the treasurer, or warding's approval is required. But we try as much as possible to ensure that either the warding or the chaplain approves before the treasurer doesn't just approve expenses. And then for 250 to 1,000 euros, the treasurer and one of either the chaplain or the warding. And for more than 1,000 euros, council has to approve. But when it is really urgent, then there is a standing committee made up of the treasurer, the chaplain, and the wardens to make the decision on behalf of the church. So for every expense more than 1,000 euros, we don't just make that decision. The council meeting is held to ensure that the approval is made. And when the council cannot meet, if it is very urgent, then the standing committee makes that decision on behalf of the church. Now, the discretionary fund for the chaplain, because last year I got a question regarding this, which is why I'm just touching points on this. The chaplain's discretionary fund is a restricted donation that is designated for the chaplain to disburse. It's at the discretion of the chaplain, it's at the knowledge of the chaplain. He decides what to do with that fund, but it's usually within charitable giving, maybe support for people or ministries or what have you. And so there are usually donations towards that cause. People donate to their discretionary fund, but the chaplain decides how to disburse the funds. So it's not within our discretion. It's just the discretion of the chaplain. And now, Mariusa, what you asked earlier regarding the uncommitted cash balance. So the last slide, please. No, just before this.
Just before, yeah.
Yes, this one, yes. So that's the breakdown. So you can see the uncommitted cash balance. So the cash in the current account as at 2024 was 46,000 plus euros. And then the sterling account, that's the GBP account. Why the report is not here is because it was about zero balance. It's just about €2 and £2. I mean, that account is run by the diocese.
Can I just question that figure, 2.53, it's confusing. It should be 2.530 if it means 2,000.
No, it's not 2,000.
It's 2.
It's 2. So that's why I said that the GBP balance at the end of the year, it was at zero.
So if it's 2 and 53 cents or 53.
Yes.
Yeah. Then the 46 should be 46, 908.68.
Yes, that's the judge.
Yeah.
Thank you.
To be consistent between English numbers.
Yes.
Yeah.
So yes, and this the sterling report is when it's converted to euros. So the balance was at almost zero in pounds. So the cash balance that was moved to this year is 46,000 and 46,000 K plus for the cash balance that we started with this year. Now, the uncommitted cash balance, as you can see, we deducted the value of the compassion fund, which I just explained regarding the chaplain's discretionary fund. It's not for St. George's. And then the current liabilities that we had, I covered that to make up for the donation we received for the curates, the restricted donation for 2025, 3,500 I mentioned earlier. And then we also had some charitable donations that were supposed to have been sent out in 2024, but because we probably couldn't get account numbers and all of that, so that's what is covered, and we see 7,000 for. So the actual funds available to St. George's as at start of this year was 37,851. I don't know if that is clear. I can take that again so that you understand. The restricted area where you have 2,056, that is the chaplain's discretionary fund. It's not for St. George's. It's at the discretion of the chaplain to use. And so it cannot be said to be, we cannot take all of the 46,000 for St. George's. And now the 7,004 that you see there is a makeup of 3,500 that belongs to the curate, which a donor gave for 2025 use, as well as the charitable giving that we support charities. But as at the end of 2024, we couldn't disburse the funds to all of the charities. And so the balance that we later disbursed in Q1 2025 is what is in the 7,000. So the 3,500 plus that. And so the actual cash that was available to St. George's as a church for their operating expenses is 37,851. That was what we used to start the year 2025. Yes.
Donations can be done for specific projects.
Yes.
Say all ministries actually, like for example, you donate to the Russian fund or to the youth group.
Yes.
During the specific group.
Yes. Yes. We have specific donations. So yes, you can. And when you're making the donation, you need to mention that it's for that specific use, and we have to follow. We cannot divert the fund to something else. Yes. Okay, the next slide. Now, this part that we're about to discuss, I just spoke to you in numbers, showing you numbers, but the next, no, not the slide, the next document, please, Elaine. Yes, please. It's more or less a call to action, basically, not what we've been going through, what we've been seeing some minutes ago. The thing is that our financial position is quite challenging at this time, as we would see, because what we've been expecting is quite lower than, yes, this one please. It's quite lower than what we actually need to sustain the ministry. Now, this is not a call to having funds available as profit in the account. This is us needing funds to actually operate as a church. Now, the thing is, it's just a call to unity, to us to see a bit of responsibility towards what we need as a church. So for this part, I would urge that we listen to our minds and allow the Spirit to please lead us as we, because this is something redemptive, if I may use that word, to redeem the church. Okay, so for the cash flow, it's just to show us what, at this time, what our cash flow is. Cash flow is basically inflow and outflow. A very short summary of what we've received and what has gone out. Now, at the start of the year, just like you saw in the audit report, 46,911.21, if you recall that amount, that was what we brought into 2025. But we have some restricted funds in that amount. The only amount of St. George's is about 37, if you remember. good. Now, what we have, I can't really see that one, so I'm trying to use my screen. Okay, now you can see 33,490.47. You can see that figure. That is how much we've spent so far in Q1. And the balance you see just at the bottom, 13,000 plus. That's what we currently have at St. George's.
And that has to be used to operational costs.
Yes, those are operational costs. But even in there, I still have Massimo's 3,500. I have it there. So we're at less than 10K currently. That's what we have as at today. I ensured that I generated this report this morning. The next one, please. So I will show the profit and loss statement so that you can see the inflow and the breakdown of the expenses. Perfect, yes. So that's the profit and loss statement. Now this shows the operating income, what we've been running with so far, and the breakdown. Now for the bank transfers covers the TP, that's the contactless, the one-offs that are coming, the regular standing orders that we receive, and that's what we have there. People who pay tithes as well goes there. So that's 31,000 plus. Then for ceremonies, 1,670. Those are the blessing of marriages and all of that we get. For the envelopes, so people who give in envelopes, that's how much we've gotten so far. It's 1,130. And then for specific use, there's some people who put in monies for specific use. What we've gotten so far is 530 for that. I don't always like to add that to our inflow because it's for specific use. If the person asks me to give it to Mariusa, I will give it to Mariusa, so it's not for St. George's. Now for the net fares and events, it's 2,165. So our total income for this year so far is 41,871. That's how much we've made this year, basically. But still on that, if we had received the diocese funding for Massimo, which ought to have come in, it was supposed to be at about 23K to have come in. But even with that fund, we need to pay what we call the common fund, that costs over 10,000. You know, and of course the pension. As you will see when we go down, the only pension value that has come out of our actual plus is for Q1. So that money that is currently with the diocese, that 23K that you hear me talking about, as though it's going to come in, it's not going to come in because we're going to have to pay for the common fund, which is about 10K plus. We're going to pay for pension, which is over 5,000, and then some other lithium expenses for the diocese. So maybe what would come in from that 23K would be at about 7,000. So we're hopeful to get that. That is a significant amount. Now for the expenses, we can see so far the administrative support, like I mentioned, it's not only for, it's for, that is the stipend, sorry, 5,832.93. The bank stripe and order, this is just the charges for the bank operations that we do. The local cost in case we're not aware, is for, it's what we use to support priests who take the service on behalf of the chaplain, so when the chaplain is away. So 711 for that, the chaplain's pension. So now you can see what I was referencing earlier. That's the value for Q1 that we've made. As at now, it's supposed to be double of that amount. But we've only disbursed the Q1 amounts from our current purse because the expectation is that what we expect from the diocese should be deducted from what they have on there. And the chaplain social security, stipend, the cleaning department, conferences and synod, the curate's pension, also the same value, as you can see, just Q1, that has been actually deducted because we expect the diocese to deduct from the monies that they currently owe to us. And the social security, the stipend, so now this is, if you remember when I was referencing earlier, the Q1 donations we needed to make to charities for year 2024. So you can see now it's now reflecting as deducted there. That's part of the 7,000 restricted earlier, yes. So that's part of it. The guest store, the payroll and tax filing, that's the amount, the office supplies, offsites and events. So this just like in Castle Tada was what came on the offsite and events. Some expenses we made during Castle Tada and all that. The phone and internet, repairs and maintenance, the taxes and insurance. This covers our insurance as well as the IRPF for the chaplain. Yes, please. Massimo. Okay.
The first column is just the code.
It's the transportation costs, utilities, website and other marketing, worship and kitchen supplies, the youth ministry, that's the youth workers coverage. So I ensured I read through all of the expenses so that we see that there is no expense that is not important. Everything here is important to be paid.
Can you show us the rest of the screen, please?
Oh, sorry. Thank you. Yes. And so the expenses so far is 74,961.
Does that transportation include the car lease?
Yes. Everything transportation. Everything transportation. The car lease, the curate going somewhere, the chaplain going somewhere, everything transportation is covered there. And so our operating profit, I don't even know why I use the word profit because it's not. Or we can say minus 33. So that's why we have a current balance of just about 13K, out of which, like I mentioned, 3.5 belongs to the curate. So please, the picture. So the picture will just show us at a glance. I just wanted us to see.
The last one.
Yes, the last one, just the picture. It just shows us what, it's just a graphic representation of our inflow and our expense. So that we see that on the average, we need about 13K monthly. If you can just help me zoom that, please. So the lines in orange, the bar lines, the bars in orange, those are our expenses. And the green, that's our income, that's the inflow every month. So as you can see, now for February it's significantly higher because we paid because of the pension cost. So for every quarter when we pay the pension, it should have been reflected now in May, but because the actual deduction has not been made, it's still fictitious with the diocese. That's why May is still looking like we made something higher than what we actually spent. But the spend is going to get as much as 15, because the IRPF for the month has not even been deducted yet. So yes. So on the average, we need about 13K monthly to support the church. Averagely, it's about 10 if we put together the stipend and all of that. But averagely, if we take the average for the year monthly, we need at least 13K. Right now, we don't have 13.
How much if we deduct the diocese contribution? How much?
If we deduct the diocese, no, I don't get the context. If we deduct it, you mean for this month?
No, overall. I mean, you said 13K monthly.
Oh, yes. So if we, like I said earlier,
If we deduct
if we
60
deduct-
$60,000, it becomes half.
yeah, that's about 10.
No, 13 to 10 isn't square.
So averagely 13 for the entire year, because per quarter we would have to pay for the pension, which takes about almost 5K. which is why we have that average. At first I mentioned we needed about 10K to run the church monthly, about that. If you look at the bar, you will see for January and February, you can see the significant, the difference, the increase. I will give the actual values. Just a moment. Now for January, if we take out about 3K, which we had to give up for the charities, that's what was brought in from 2024, the charitable giving, which we disbursed in January, you can see that January is about 14K plus. So when you take out about 3K, the actual spend in January was about 10K plus in January. In February, we paid for the pension, which took about, when you add 2,000, as a January it was 2,700, because it's dropped in for Q2, which is now 2,600. So by the time you add 2,700 on average for pension, that's about 5K plus. And in February, we spent 15,846. So on the average, we spent 10K monthly.
So if we say that the accuracy, the cost of accuracy is virtually paid and covered, right? Last year in a way, this year in another way. So it means what you just said, does it mean that we need more or less 10,000 for all the other costs?
No, it's including the curate.
Yes, but we said that it's virtually covered completely.
Yes.
So it means the 10,000 that you're saying is all the rest.
Yeah.
No. So the 10,000, yes, accumulated, yes. We need 10,000 accumulated. That's plus the curate funding, yes. On the average.
One of the things with the curate is the timing of the giving from the diocese doesn't always tie in with our expenditure. Often we're having to, in terms of cash flow, we're having to give the expenditure before the income.
So can you clarify, you said the diocese gives the stipend.
Gives 70%.
February, March, and they did.
Yes, it
Still
has.
waiting.
Yes.
Over 6 months into the year, they still didn't give the first installment.
It has, not the first, the second.
The second.
Yes, the second. It's yet to come into our account. But as at April this year, I think the funding was already available. However, we had told the diocese to make the deductions because we need to pay for the common fund, like I mentioned earlier, and we wanted to make use of the early payments because if we don't pay on time, there is a fine of about €1,000. Yes, so we wanted to make use of that.
That's a proper question. We're in contact with the diocese to see what we can do about an aligning of the systems.
Can we find them when they pay us?
Well, that's a very good question.
Yes, so but the thing is, with that, St. George's ought to provide 30% of funding. Now, when you go to the diocese with that, what happened to your 30%? Your 30% is supposed to at least cover up until when the diocese 70% comes in. So that's the question. We're actually not making the 30% expense because what we prepared for the curate, we prepared it in such a way we added the housing costs. So in a way, it gives St. George's a save. So we're actually not making the 30% for 2025. In 2024, we needed to make some funding, which a donor generously gave. But for this year, which would commence in June or July, we would actually not have an actual spend from St. George's, yes.
Any more urgent questions? There's a couple of things we need to do. One is to accept the annual report. Then it goes to the outside auditors, so that's an official thing. Just to say that on the discretionary fund, if any of you ever knows anyone in need in the church, I keep cases ever asked from the auditors. I have a form that if I give a donation to someone, they sign for it, and I sign for it, so that everything is above board, although no one knows it. If the need is greater than a couple of hundred, then I take advice from one of the members of the standing committee. So if you know of anyone who is ever in particular need, the rest of the council don't know, but do come to me. It's also worth saying that under our system, the curate receives the same as I do. in terms of stipend. There is no difference in terms of ministerial role and the level received. One of the ways that we work in the church agreement.
So just a question on the discretionary fund, it was the same 2023, 2024, that means we've not been using it these last 2 years?
I'm not sure how that came, because actually I gave out quite a lot.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I think there is something about how there are a couple of things that still being worked out. We've got the new system here, but also the dioceses are just beginning stipends within Europe. So you've got two different things going on in terms of change in requests.
One question, and I don't know if it's too naive, or I don't know, but if the diocese doesn't actually fund anything else, no.
Nothing, so everything is from within the church.
Yes,
Just
please.
two questions. One is, apart from the operating expenses, the ongoing costs, as you said, there's nothing to eliminate, it's all going to be covered.
Yes.
Do you anticipate for the next year, there'll be additional projects or capital projects or something coming out beyond what you have budgeted?
I wouldn't be able to say for the next year, but I know that for this year, for instance, we have the kneelers, the project for the kneelers coming up. I don't know if that's supposed to be a major project or something, but yes, no, beyond that, no. And I can't anticipate for the next year unless it comes up. So if there is a need for something, it's usually brought up to the church and it's discussed. And most times it is treated as a project. And so people make donations specifically for it.
There will be a new heater for the top flat, for water heater, because it keeps going out. So that will be one of the projects for the coming year.
Okay, and the second question
There'll be special thinking projects that allows people to do.
for that.
Yes,
Yeah.
for the projects, yes.
And then the second question was just given the situation, as you explained it, that we're short of budget, is there any intention to do some kind of special appeal or making aware?
Yes, yes.
May I come in on this? This has been videoed today, intentionally, so it's going to be sent out to the whole church. And we have John Pennell and Sheridan from his church here, and we'll be putting out something very detailed to the church on that, but in language you need to understand. And I think it's really important. I think there's two things here. One is enabling the ministry to continue. But the other is we really want to see ministry develop. We need to go beyond this. This building is 50 years old. We've been blessed by the work done, funds raised for windows being put in, for heating system, for solar panels on the roof. So there's a lot to give thanks for, but we have to recognize that at this age, the building begins to have issues. And so to really move forward, we really need to help. And yes, we really need on two levels. One is we need to present the facts, and one we also need to go for prayer. And I really want, and I'll be working this the week after next. We're also, from tonight until Tuesday, we're meeting, which, by the way, the diocese pays for this. The chaplains, because Nelson was going away the week after, he won't be joining us, but he's eligible to. The chaplains of Northern Spain are meeting. We're meeting in Menorca tonight. We're short of 3 chaplains in Northern Spain. And one of the areas, Costa Brava, is because they cannot afford any stipend. So, in the midst of our struggles, we give thanks. We're actually in one of the best situations post-pandemic. But we really need to call for prayer and call for action. And any advice on that would be gratefully received. Okay.
Yes, that's about it.
Thank you very much, Augusta. We accept the annual accounts,
Very important.
and then we need that voted on, and then it goes to the outside auditors. So that's our next proposal. We accept the accounts.
2024 accounts.
All those in favour? Any against?
Thank
Can
you.
I just suggest that the numbers be updated, the commas and the dots?
It cannot be that for this because it's fun and done document, but for the future, yes. Yeah. Well, thank you all very much. Let's pray then, shall we? Father, we come in a situation of need. Your people have often been in that, and you're a God who has answered, and we've seen you answer in the past. And we pray you would enable us to see your hand, that we might be able to look back on this meeting with thanksgiving. And we commit all things to you. We commit Augusta to you. Thank you for her work. In Jesus' name. Amen. Thank you all very much.